Shalom. Parshas Miketz. Parshas Miketz 57:81. So one time a man came to Reb Zusha and he was crying. He said his father had died a month ago, and ever since his father had died, he was having these dreams every single night. And in these dreams, his father was coming to him and telling him, "You have to convert out of Judaism. You have to leave the religion." Kept telling him in these dreams every night, and the man was getting very upset because he knew that his father was a very proud Jew and never would have wanted to have encouraged him to leave the Jewish faith. So he didn't know what to make of these dreams. So he went to Reb Zusha and he said, "Rebbe, can you please help me understand what these dreams are all about?" And so Reb Zusha said to him, "You need to go at once to your father's grave, dig up the grave. For sure, some trinkets from a different religion must have fallen into the grave while they were burying your father, and that's the reason why he keeps coming to you in the dream." And sure enough, they went and they found, when they dug up the grave, a person who was there had a ring, and the ring had a symbol of a different religion, and they had to remove the ring from the grave, and then the dream stopped. Now, in those days, the Hasidic masters were in a dispute, unfortunately, with the leaders of the Misnagdim, Vilna Gaon, and the Vilna Gaon didn't have the highest respect for Reb Zusha's scholarship. So when they told the story of how Reb Zusha understood these dreams to the Vilna Gaon said, "I am amazed because I don't know how Reb Zusha knew this, but there's a Yerushalmi, there's in the Jerusalem Talmud, an esoteric text, which has the same idea. And I don't know how Reb Zusha knew this Yerushalmi, but there is a Yerushalmi that says the same idea that Reb Zusha intuited." And when they brought the banner back to Reb Zusha said, "The truth is, the Vilna Gaon is right. I never saw that text from the Yerushalmi. I never saw that obscure text. But what I didn't see was the source of that text," meaning to say that Reb Zusha had such tremendous insight that he was able to interpret what the dreams were about, because he saw the same concept spiritually that the people who wrote the Talmud saw. So that he was on an even higher level. He understood the essence of the source for the Talmudic texts. And this story of Reb Zusha contains within it this idea that a dream contains powerful spiritual information, both contained within the dream itself. It can contain powerful spiritual information, and the person who's interpreting the dream can also have access to harness that spirituality, but in some ways, like in the story of Reb Zusha, by having direct insight into the ways of Hashem. This concept of dreams, the belief that the dreams can be filled with a spiritual message, is also a powerful theme in our portion, as Yosef demonstrates his greatness by interpreting the dreams of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh, in turn, recognizes Yosef's greatness and recognizes that Yosef is divinely inspired. And Pharaoh says, as it says in the pasuk, so Pharaoh said to Yosef, "Since Hashem has made this known to you, there is ein chacham v'navon kamocha." There's nobody who is as wise and discerning as you. This is the concept of the parsha. But in our Haftorah, which we only read, I think, 4 times in the last 50 years or 70 years. It's very rare that on Parshas Miketz we read the Haftorah from Miketz. Usually we just read the Haftorah for Shabbos Chanukah. But this year Miketz is not Chanukah, so we read the Haftorah for Miketz. And in the Haftorah for Miketz we see a variation of this concept of the power of a dream and the power imbued in someone to harness the spirituality from a dream. So the Haftorah tells a story that comes from the first book of Kings, chapter 3, verse 15. It's a story of Shlomo HaMelech sinning in judgment of 2 women, both claiming that a single child is their own child. And immediately prior to the passage, the part we don't read in the Haftorah, we're told that Hashem had visited Shlomo HaMelech in a dream, and Hashem appeared to Shlomo in a dream at night, and Hashem says to Shlomo, "What shall I grant you? You can have anything in the world." And Shlomo says, "Grant me wisdom. I'm young. I want to understand how to rule justly over my kingdom, and Hashem promises Shlomo, he's going to give him wisdom, and he says there will be nobody as wise as Shlomo. That's what Hashem says to Shlomo HaMelech. So in the context of Shlomo HaMelech asking Hashem to make him wise, we're then told the story of the Haftorah. Now, many commentaries assume that the reason why this is the Haftorah for Miketz is because this connection to dreams, that Yosef interprets Pharaoh's dream, and also Hashem comes and tells Shlomo, as a result of this dream, Hashem grants Shlomo great wisdom. But there are other connections, obvious connections, aside from this connection of the dreams. First of all, both Shlomo and Yosef are reported to be the wisest man in the land. That's what Paro says about Yosef, and that's what Hashem says to Shlomo. And both marry into Egyptian royalty. It says at the beginning of chapter 3 that Shlomo marries the daughter of Pharaoh, and also Yosef marries Osnat, Bat Potiphera, that she is given to him by Pharaoh. So they are both marrying into Egyptian royalty. But there is another connection, which is, I think, much deeper between these two passages. So the story that we read for the Haftorah is the classic story of two women coming to Shlomo HaMelech, and the first woman comes before Shlomo, and she says, this woman and I, we live in the same house, and I gave birth to a child while she was in the house, and then her child died. In the middle of the night, she came and took my child from me and replaced it with her dead child. And the other woman says, no, her child is the one who was dead, and my child is alive. And Shlomo HaMelech says, okay, I'll tell you what to do. Bring me a knife, and I'm going to split the baby in half. And one woman responds, no, give her the live child, just don't kill it. And the other one says, no, she'll be neither of ours, cut it in two. And then at that point, Shlomo says, the one who says the baby shall live, that's the true mother. So this is the brilliance of Shlomo HaMelech in discerning who is the true mother by saying, I'm gonna cut the baby in half, and only the true mother would say, I'd rather the child to live rather than cutting the baby in half. But so this is the story that proves how wise Shlomo HaMelech is. But we wonder the question: how did Shlomo really know? How did Shlomo really know that this would work? What was his fallback plan? If let's say they both would have said, yeah, cut the baby in half. Chas v'shalom, would Shlomo HaMelech really have done that? So the real question is, was threatening to cut the baby in half his way of divining the real truth of the matter, or was it just his way of showing everybody around him what he already knew? Did he already know who the real mother was? So the Maggid of Dubno explains that Shlomo HaMelech knew before this experiment of offering to split the baby in half, he knew who the real mother was. How did he know who the real mother was? Because he was able to figure it out by the way the two mothers spoke. How did they speak? So there's two ways in which there was a distinction between the way they spoke. And we have to look at the text. One crucial distinction between the way the two women spoke is that one mother mentions, my baby is alive, and the other woman's baby is dead. Whereas the second woman says, no, her baby is dead, and my baby is alive. So Shlomo HaMelech said, the woman who said, my baby is alive first, he understood that the mother whose baby was already dead was not at all interested in the living baby. Only the one who puts the living baby first, it shows her focus. Her focus was on the living baby. And the woman whose baby had died, her only focus was on making sure that the other woman would also be denied happiness. That's why she begins her speech with the words, her baby is dead, meaning to say she wants to deny the happiness to the other woman. And in contrast, the mother of the living baby was intently focused on keeping her baby alive. That's why she says, this is the live baby. That's the first clue that the Maggid of Dubno points out. The second clue, he says, is that the way each woman referred to the living child. The mother of the living baby, if you look at the text, says, Zet. This one is my child. Whereas the imposter mother, she did not use the word zeh. Instead, she said, the dead one is yours. But the mother of the real living baby said, this baby. And the difference is, while the real mother is focused on keeping this son alive, she connects them. She says, this one is the living child. The imposter is just focused on denying the other baby. The use of the word zeh shows the connection between the mother and her child. And the message of the story goes far beyond just this tale of Shlomo and these two mothers. The fundamental message of our story is, through our actions, we can demonstrate if we are like the true mother of the baby, or, God forbid, the imposter. Do we desire our own success, or do we, God forbid, resent the success of others? Do we wish for life for ourselves, or death for others? Chas v'shalom. Are we so embittered with life that we resent the success of others? Or do we truly rejoice upon learning of the success of others? These basic questions serve as a strong connection between the Haftorah and the story of Yosef. Yosef is initially sold into slavery because his brothers are jealous of him. It says, Vayikanu bo achiv. His brothers were jealous of him. And however, in our parasha, we see the redemption of that relationship. We see the redemption of the brothers when they're able to overcome sibling jealousy and the resentment of the greatness of another brother. Where do we see this? Proof for this comes from when the brothers finally bring down Binyamin to Yosef, to Egypt per Yosef's request, and Yosef showered extra attention upon Binyamin. It says in the verse that Yosef gave portions of food to all of the brothers, but he gave 5 times as much to Benjamin. Poor Benjamin was greater than their other portions. And after Yosef gave Benjamin more portions, it says that the brothers they drank their fill with him. The brothers drank with Joseph. Rashi says, what do we learn out from the fact that it says they drank their fill with him? Rashi explains that it means that day they drank with Binyamin. That day they drank with Benjamin. Because from that day that Yosef was sold, neither the brothers nor Yosef had allowed themselves to drink even a drop of wine. Meaning to say they were in such mourning from the day that Yosef was sold, they regretted it. And Yosef was in deep mourning as well, that neither the brothers nor Joseph drank even a drop of wine as a way to mourn or to mark the fact that they were mourning for the breakdown of their family. However, that day they drank wine. That day where Yosef saw Benjamin, that day they drank wine. So it's understandable why it says Sefer Kav Chen. It's understandable why Yosef would drink wine that day. Of course Yosef's going to drink wine because he sees Benjamin for the first time in many years. He's able to rejoice. He's happy. He finds his brother who he was missing. Of course he's going to be so happy. Of course he's going to rejoice. This was indeed cause for great celebration. But why would his brothers break their tradition of not drinking wine? From their perspective, they were still missing their brother Yosef. They were mourning his loss. So there should not have been any cause for joy. They didn't know that this was Yosef. So why are the brothers drinking wine? So it says the Sefer Kav Chen. It says it's like this, that they had been repenting for the sin of resenting Joseph. When Joseph received the coat and Joseph was elevating, as a result of the dreams, he was elevating himself, so they were resentful of Joseph. But they were doing tshuva, they were repenting for that. Now they see Benjamin receiving these extra portions, and they knew inside themselves they did not have an ounce of resentment. They were so happy for Benjamin getting the extra portions from Joseph. They were ecstatic. They were so happy. They said, oh, we're happy. We finally have repented for the sin of selling Joseph. We feel not an ounce of resentment at our brother's success. And that's why on that day they drank the wine. This is the challenge. This is the challenge that we must take upon ourselves in order to reach spiritual greatness. Not everyone can reach the level of having so much joy at another person's success. It's as though we are having our own success. That is an incredible level. Not even everyone can have, just be overwhelmed with great joy at another person's success. These are very great spiritual levels that we should be striving for. But God forbid should we ever resent another person's success. At a minimum, we have to be so careful not to resent the success of others. Such an attribute is a spiritual disaster that we must avoid at all costs. And I feel like this week in our world, especially in D.C., because it's starting here for the first time this week, we have the opportunity to rejoice at the success of our city and the success of others. As some people in our city are already beginning to be vaccinated. We see that some people are getting vaccinated for this terrible virus already this week. So as our country has experienced this scientific miracle and the world has seen the scientific miracle of the vaccine, there's surely going to be a long line. People are going to be jostling to try and get ahead of the line about who can receive the vaccine first. But let's mark the occasion this week of just being so happy for the first line healthcare workers who are getting the vaccine first this week before everybody else. That is something that should fill us all with just tremendous, tremendous joy. Our scientists and their support teams deserve so much credit for this vaccine, which is saving many lives. Of course, above all, we give thanks to Hashem Yisparach. And it feels appropriate to mark this week where we have this just tremendous discovery, or this giving out, the delivery of the vaccine. It feels appropriate to mark it with a blessing. So even though most of us have not yet been vaccinated, we should all rejoice for the vaccine coming to our area, and it's fitting for our community to recite a blessing. And so therefore this week, just before Kabbalat Shabbat, we will recite a special blessing to mark this occasion. We're going to do it on our pre-Shabbat Zoom and also in person for those who daven Mincha in person and connect on Zoom. And we will be saying, Shechianu, thank you Hashem, from the bottom of our hearts for bringing us to this moment in our life. We are so grateful to you, God, for the blessings that you give us every day of our life.